Hello and welcome to McClendon Studios. I'm your host David E. McClendon Sr. and this is Indy's videos. Today I'm going to tell you about Granny for short. Now, my grandmother Ruby, Ruby Fowler McClendon, was a very wonderful lady. When I was first born, she lived in Johnston, South Carolina, and my family, me included, lived in Doraville, Georgia. And so going to visit Grandma Ruby was like a million miles away. It seemed like it took days and days and days, and really it was only a few hundred miles away, and it took just a few hours. But it seemed like forever to go and visit Grandma McClendon. Well, one day we went to visit Grandma McClendon, well, for several days actually. We were visiting my Grandma McClendon, my sister, my brother, and I. My parents had gone somewhere, I don't know, one of the trips that my father had won with selling National Cash Register or something else, I'm not really sure. Anyway, so we're staying with Grandma Ruby, and she washes her clothes in the washing machine just outside of her house. She had this utility room that had her washing machine in it up under her carport, which is really cool. I really liked that way that it was set up. And but she didn't have a dryer. She liked to dry things out on the clothesline. At least I assume she liked to dry them that way. That's the way she did it. So she had a clothesline out in back of the house, and my sister, my brother, and I were out watching her hang up the clothes on the clothesline. And my little brother, who was probably about 4 or 5, something like that, said, "Grandma, can we call you Granny for short?" My grandma just thought that was incredibly cool. You know, Granny was a cute name, so she said, "Sure, you call me Granny for short if you like to." And so my sister, the smart aleck that she was, and I, my beautiful, humble self, started calling her Granny for short. "Hello, Granny for short. How you doing, Granny for short?" And Granny for short got to where she signed all our birthday cards and any letters that she sent us, whatever she mailed to us kids, always said Granny for short. And when she gave us presents at Christmas or birthdays or whatever, it would have on the tag, "From Granny for short." This lasted for years. Anyway, one of the fondest memories I have of Granny for short was that up until the time that she found out, or I found out, or we found out that I was a diabetic, whenever I went to her house, she always made me chocolate pudding. Now, other people could eat the chocolate pudding, but it was made specifically for me. I love chocolate pudding. I especially love my grandma's chocolate pudding. Nobody makes chocolate pudding better than Granny for short. Just, you'll never find anybody that can make chocolate pudding any better than Granny for short. Of course, I'm biased. But she made it from scratch. None of these instant jello or instant pudding or whatever. She made it from scratch. And then after she found out I was a diabetic, she started trying to find ways to make a good chocolate pudding that was sugar-free. Well, she never actually found anything that worked. The dessert was not all that good. And my wife at one point in time had found a chocolate pudding recipe that was made with graham crackers and was sugar-free. And it was very good, but somewhere along the way the recipe got misplaced and we haven't been able to find it. Anyway, making a short story long, like I usually do, let's get back to Granny for short. Well, one day at school they served us what they called icebox pie. This was very good. It was made with key lime, and it was very good. First time I ever had key lime, but it was icebox pie. Anyway, my grandma, Granny for short, was a lunchroom lady at Strom Thurmond High School there in Johnston, South Carolina, and I'm sure she was a very good lunchroom lady. None of these other, lunchroom ladies could hold a candle to my Granny for short, because she's the best cook ever. Sorry, Nana, but best cook ever. Anyway, so I made mention while we were eating at my grandma's house. They made something called icebox pie at school the other day, and my grandmother said, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Oh wow, it was great. I really liked it." So the next time I went to visit Granny for short, not only did we have chocolate pudding, which was going to happen, we also had icebox pie. My grandma made the icebox pie special for me. She made 2 of them, one for me and one for the unlucky people that had to share a pie. Anyway, this was wonderful. I really liked the icebox pie. It was very tasty. Along and along, my grandmother moved from her house there in Johnston, South Carolina, to Iowa, South Carolina. But let me tell you a little bit before that. my Aunt Gloria got married to my Uncle Franklin, which was kind of convenient for your aunt to marry your uncle, but he wasn't my uncle until she married him. And as a matter of fact, my Aunt Gloria got married to Franklin right there in my grandmother's living room and dining room there in Johnston, South Carolina. And what was really cool is soon after that, they bought the house right directly behind Grandma's house. And Franklin's parents lived kind of cat-a-corner across the intersection from that house that they bought. So they're all right there together in one little area, and Franklin's parents treated me very nicely, just like a grandkid, and it was wonderful. You know, we'd go visit every once in a while. We didn't do that much, but every once in a while we'd go over there and pop in and visit. And the thing about Franklin was he didn't want to be called Uncle Franklin. He put a stop to that very soon, because we started out, we're good Southern kids, you call even people that aren't related to you uncle or aunt or whatever, if you know they're older than you, you don't just go up and say Billy Bob, it'd be Uncle Billy Bob. Well, you know, of course Uncle Franklin was what we were supposed to call him. But Franklin wouldn't hear of it. It was always, just call me Franklin. Franklin always called my grandmother Mrs. McClendon. Anyway, along the way, my grandmother moved to the house. We built a house in the backyard of McClendon Manor, and so my grandmother moved in there. And if you'll see the video, Driving Mrs. Crazy, that'll give you a little more detail on that. And I'm going to tell you about the building of Grandma's house, because it's really cool. Anyway, but Grandma had a house, a very efficient house, built into our backyard. And I could pop in and visit her, and usually did, you know, about every day, sometimes every other day, but pop in for a few minutes and tell her what was going on in my life. She'd tell me what was going on in her life, and, you know, just, you know, nice little visits. We didn't really have a whole lot to share because there really wasn't a whole lot going on in a little town like Iowa, South Carolina. But we would get to talk to one another for a few minutes and go on, and from time to time I pop in, and she'd, you know, would need to go visit her sister or go to the doctor or whatever, and I, you know, love to drive. I'd drive anywhere. So I'd drive her, sometimes in her car, sometimes in my car, but take her to visit her sisters and take her to, well, one sister in particular, and take her to the doctor from time to time. Now, this didn't happen very often, but still, it's nice having Granny for short, in the backyard. And unfortunately, Granny for short died a few years ago, several years ago now, way too many years ago actually. Anyway, we got the call early one Sunday morning. We were getting ready, loading up the cars, getting everybody ready to load into the car to go, of all places, down to visit her at the nursing home in Edgefield. And my Uncle Franklin called, and he said, Mrs. McClendon passed away this morning. And of course we were devastated, and a couple of days later they had the funeral, and we had to drive down to visit her, and we almost didn't make it in time for the funeral just because of a scheduling problem with my work. They didn't want to let me go. They wanted to keep me there to the very last minute because they weren't very much into other people's family, but very much into their own family. Anyway, that's neither here for there. Just want to let you know, Granny for short, we miss you, we love you, and we know you're having a grand old time up there in heaven. This is a Federal Trade Commission required notice. When you click on an advertisement that is displayed with this video, or just before it, we receive a small commission. Sometimes, if you merely watch an ad, we receive commission. If you purchase anything by clicking on links on any of our websites, we receive a commission as well. These great redneck coffee mugs are available at www.cafepress.com/redneckforpresident. We receive a commission off of them as well. You can also purchase buttons, yard signs, etc. from that website.